So to begin with, I'm just going to pass the mic around to everybody to introduce themselves and what they are doing to accelerate scientific progress.
Well, that's nice. Okay, so my background is actually in science. I'm a professor in economics at the Free University in Amsterdam. Worked a lot in various fields of research and got really frustrated with the replication crisis that I saw in various fields. And this actually triggered me to found DeSci Labs and the DeSci Foundation, basically as an attempt to create a new infrastructure for scientific publishing, for validating and curating knowledge in the open and in a way that would actually help us to make science much more accessible and much more robust.
Okay, first of all, I'm a scientist, so I think I contribute to the construction and diffusion of science as a scientist. Second, I funded the UCL Center for Blockchain Technology, so I do believe in this kind of technologies. I am head of a large group, so I'm chief editor of a journal, so in the sense I'm trying to be active in this domain, which is very problematic. I think the talk that preceded us was really on the spot. All the issues that we have in this field, there is a lot that can be done. It's not going to be easy, it's going to be very, very difficult, but I'm very keen to contribute.
So I'm not sure if I personally contribute a lot, but I contribute by going out and talking to people about that, pointing out the problems and trying to bring together a community. And I think it's really nice because the term DeSci came up about, I think, beginning of last year, probably the year before, but it was not always there. So at the beginning, we were all working on the same topics, had the same ideas, but the community was not so strong. And I think my intention is to bring this together and to tell the people, okay, we have this problem and let's solve it with blockchain. You have it.
Yeah, I think I already got my mic here. Hi, everyone. My name is Manuel. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of Copernic Space, and we are building out marketplaces for space companies to list their research assets to the public market, to the retail market, to find new business models and to become profitable with the research. And with my own DAO, Deep Venture DAO, I'm incubating different space-focused research collectives. So these are everything related to hard tech-related science, space science and engineering, and with Gitcoin and the whole DeSci community. And I see some familiar faces in here as well. We are also growing the whole DeSci ecosystem with super early stage Web3 grants funding. And yeah, that's it. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we often talk about accelerating scientific progress. We use this term accelerate a lot at the moment. You may have seen the E/ACC moniker on Twitter, the effective accelerationists. This concept of accelerating scientific progress is becoming really, really prevalent in the mindshare. So I think it's important for us to first define what acceleration is and what scientific progress is. So why don't we first start with what does scientific progress actually look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I think this is actually at the heart of the problem of what we have currently in science. So remember in the 60s or 70s when research organizations were coming under more pressure to basically measure the productivity of scientific output of their scientists. This was the beginning of the rise of all the quantitative measures that we now have in science, right? So this is when we started to have the Web of Science, when we started counting publications, citations, when impact factors became a thing. And all of that, we understand, it's clear that there was a need to quantify scientific progress. But the problem is that these markers or these measures of scientific productivity actually became a target. And when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So now we have the problem that most scientists, probably at a pretty early stage in their career, face this dilemma that they realize they came into this ivory tower thinking that they would contribute to scientific progress and truth discovery. And then they realize what they're actually doing is like a accounting exercise where they just have to publish more and primarily in high impact factors and get a lot of citations. And that creates really bad incentives. That's at the core of a lot of the replication problems that we have. We see actually that these measures of scientific productivity that we use in science, for example, the number of publications and the number of citations, they have been increasing exponentially over the last 2 decades. But did this actually contribute to an acceleration of scientific progress? I would argue no. There is evidence showing that breakthrough discoveries in a lot of fields, they're becoming less frequent. There's also evidence that a lot of the innovations that are coming out of science, they become more marginal rather than actual breakthroughs. You can also look at total factor productivity, an economic measure that basically estimates productivity gains in industry. You don't really see that accelerating. And I think that really is the problem, that we have created incentives for scientists to basically just publish a lot, but that's not the same thing as actually contributing to the generation of useful knowledge.
Okay, first of all, I think that the role of science and what is innovation is very simple and clear and should be stated. And the scientists are here to advance human knowledge, full stop. And to make sure to move the boundary of human knowledge, because there is also machine knowledge, which is something different. And second, to make sure that society can benefit from it, so not knowledge by itself, and especially that future generation can benefit for a long by it. This, I think, is very, very important, because this is the purpose. There is no other purposes. Then, I mean, of course, counting publication is a way to evaluate how well you have done. Probably bad way. The problem with incentive, we know, is the same problem in all complex systems. I'm professor of complexity science, not that I know something about it, but I mean, is that whenever you put an incentive, the community move toward the incentive and maximize the incentive. And scientists are average smart people, so they do it even faster. So you put something, and in the couple of years, in a few years, everybody is just maximizing that, not maximizing the output, because the incentive is not in the output. And that will be the problem with anything. I mean, whatever we invent with blockchain, it will be skewed at some stage toward the maximizing the incentive. That is a real problem. So we have to face it. And furthermore, I think that, I mean, the fact that the system is very chaotic, in the sense there is a lot of different things and different people motivated by different reasons. Somebody, I mean, try to make money out of it, somebody try to become famous, and someone, I don't know what. This is good. This is very good, because this diversity is something that must be incentivized. And again, I mean, in whichever system we want to put in place, I mean, or we want to redesign, it should be able, to include the diversity and to, make this diversity thrive.
Yeah, I think there's not so much to add. So I would go back to not much scientific progress, but progress in general. For me, progress always happens when you start questioning a system, which is right now, how it is right now. And I think this is what happened in the last year, so that there are a lot of scientists, a lot of researchers who are questioning the system. Okay, so I have to publish, and I have to get a lot of citations, and if I get 10 Nature's papers, I will be the director of a Max Planck Institute. But people are starting to question this, and this is the starting point of progress. That's my...
All right, so I have a slightly different definition of like scientific and technological progress, because for me what I see is that, when it comes to like publishing of patents, IP publishing, there's like an unfair distribution of how many patents a year are registered all across the globe. So for example, here in Europe we do like a pretty good job in foundational sciences, also when it comes to industry applications, but then oftentimes these highly skilled researchers go to the States, because they have like massive capital markets supporting this early stage research, also when it comes to tech transfer. And then after that, what happens is that all the Asian markets, especially China, are kind of copying these inventions. which is like, again, exploiting the knowledge capital here in Europe, while creating an unfair advantage for exactly these economies that we kind of compete with when it comes to scientific and technological progress. So I define technological progress definitely as how many patents are registered per year, but not on paper that we say, oh wow, now we have a new invention and nobody's using this. Wow, thank you. But actually, how many of these registered patents can we translate to like tangible, real-world impact? How these inventions are shaping industries, how many people are using this, how many lives are affected by this invention. So this is pretty much how I measure scientific and technological progress. So I think that these impact metrics are like super important in scientific progress. And I think, that definitely when it comes to these underfunded areas, not only when it comes to commercial uses, where industries can say, okay, if we have a new breakthrough in whatever technology, this is giving us like a financial gain, but also we can support with DeSci underfunded areas that have like a too long time horizon for actually creating like, let's say, commercial or financial gains out of it. So we can think about quantum computing, there are VCs, deep tech VCs financing this, but in most cases we have a commercial time horizon of like 5 to 10 plus years before quantum computers, for example, actually can make a benefit or a commercial value for industries all across the globe. So I believe that DeSci can definitely fill this gap where other institutional investors don't want to burn their fingers. So, yeah.
Thanks. So we have a nice sort of range of ideas of what scientific progress might mean. Often, as Philipp mentioned, all these scientific progress metrics are measured on a quantifiable statistical basis, and that's because it's easy to count and then it's easy to judge. But as Tomaso alluded to, the advancement of human knowledge is much more of a holistic, qualitative thing. And so to accelerate the advancement of human knowledge, I'm going to focus in on this because I agree with that definition of scientific progress. What does acceleration of this qualitative scientific progress, the advancement of human knowledge, what does acceleration in that paradigm look like? Anyone feel free to start. I'd like to start with you, Manuel, if you are happy to.
So I believe what we can see right now in DeSci is that we have a lot of like independent research communities called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Some of them are focusing on short-term, commercially viable translational science. So they're doing a lot of biotech research, for example, to create drugs that already have a massive market. So whenever you find a valid solution to these markets, there are gains, and then you can also redistribute these gains either to the original funder of this research or to the communities via licensing rights on-chain as well. And I believe that also, what many DeSci projects and in generally speaking, like scientific projects are lacking is like a solid way, again, how they can make their research kind of more sexy in front of investors. Because, if you're an institutional investor, either the university wants to see at least that you thought about like how do you want to make money out of it, what are your customer groups, whatever, or that you have alternative means of creating some meaningful value or incentive also for your researchers to continue these efforts. So, and these research communities all across the globe, these DAOs, they are launching token sales, for example, so that they, for example, also have an incentive for their contributors to work on this, and these contributors are incentivized with tokens and so on. But still, I believe that, when you are in, let's say, a very critical industry, for example, space, and you are developing like real rocket engines, you cannot just launch a token, have, in worst case, no KYC in there, and then develop like potential rockets that you can also shoot on other people. Then you're, obviously breaking international law. So for some DeSci projects, it's not feasible to launch a token for various reasons. And I believe that still these DeSci projects need to have like at least a commercial engine where they can open up their research, open up their inventions, showing the world what they got right, and find the different groups that want to support this, either with a commercial benefit or just philanthropically, funding of the public goods. So in the end, yeah, I believe that all DeSci projects need a marketplace. So yeah.
Hyper-financialization, that's very qualitative, very holistic.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the game. This is like the low-hanging fruit, you know? Everybody in academia is like complaining the whole time, oh, we are running out of funding. What is the next step? You cannot, continue with like small grants funding the whole time. So there need to be like other economic engines to fuel this progress as well.
Yep.
So this is not the only thing, for sure there are like a handful or like more ways how you can accelerate this, but yeah, funding structures, incentive structures in open science, it's again like the low-hanging fruit, and the biggest research institutions of our time did not find a valid solution for this yet.
Better distribution of funding sources in particular will allow many more people to participate in this process and potentially advance scientific progress, right? Friederike, what is it about DeSci, about this space, that you think will actually help on the advancement of human knowledge, aside from increasing data points, aside from improving incentives maybe? What is it about DeSci you think that will improve the advancement of human knowledge?
For me, the paradigm of democratization is the most important thing in DeSci. So in my opinion, it's really important that we find new ways of organizations, and I'm not dogmatic. I don't want to disrupt the whole science system. I want to get rid of all scientific organizations, so I'm working for one of them. But I think it would be really good to come up with an additional system, to have this more wide, because science is decentral. So per se, it was all the time, but the scientific system is not decentral, and I think we have to change that back and to open it up again to more people, and to have to enable the access to science, and not to have this in our nice ivory towers of the highly ranked research institutions. So science is decentral and should be like that again.
Yes, I fully agree actually, and I would say two things. I mean, two central things in science, in accelerating science, not the making of the science, but well, the making of the science in the sense what makes science work fine, are two. One is funding. We need at least salaries for people to survive, and second, funding for research. And these are not two non-trivial things which you don't access like this. You might be a clever person with a good degree. First of all, you have to find a position in some of those institutions. And this is not easy. And then once you have the position, you have to find funding for your idea. That might be super good, but I mean, you're competing in an unfair ways with others, because it's not that easy to evaluate, I mean, how good your idea really are, especially if they are new. New ideas are never valued high, because, I mean, nobody understands that. That's very simple. And also because most likely are wrong, in the sense, I mean, there is a lot. But that is exactly what we do. We should explore things until we prove they are wrong. And this is very, very difficult, also from a commercial point of view, because, funding wrong ideas is not such a good thing. And knowing whether an idea is wrong or good before it has been exploited is impossible. I mean, typical things, of useless research is research on prime numbers. Of course, it's the most useless things is to find numbers that are not divisible, for any other number. Unfortunately, our present technology is based on it. So it's the most important research ever from the most useless things you can imagine. So that's it. And second is the credit, so the credentials, so the fact, which is publication, but publication is what it is now. Patent is what it is now. That can be highly disrupted in the sense with what Friederike mentioned, what you mentioned. The way to make these things, the micro way of accrediting the research, accrediting your data, putting credit to negative results, and all the things that you don't even exist and then can go there, and with incentives, with things. It's not simple, but I think we should start from there.
Yeah, just to add to that, so the two themes that I'm hearing here are fixing incentives and fixing funding mechanisms, and I think you're completely spot on with both of them. To give slightly different perspectives, so with incentives, one of the big problems that we currently have in science is that publications that came out typically do not have a strong incentive for anybody in the scientific community to actually attempt a literal replication of the original results. And that is highly problematic. To give you an example, the beta amyloid hypothesis for Alzheimer, for a long time it was actually the paradigm of Alzheimer research that beta amyloid is causal for Alzheimer research, for Alzheimer disease. Now it turned out that the original paper that was published about 20 years ago in Nature never was actually replicated by anybody, and so not only were the results in that paper not replicable, it turned out that the authors had actually forged some of the images. And the downstream consequences of nobody actually checking that, they were disastrous. So the NIH has funded or has spent more than $100 million on follow-up research on the beta amyloid hypothesis. A lot of research has been going into that field, a lot of preclinical trials, a lot of drug development, only to figure out a decade or 2 decades later that none of that stuff actually worked, and then this scandal broke. And these types of like wasting resources and steering scientific discovery efforts in the wrong direction could be overcome if you have a very explicit incentive in place where articles or findings that appear to be central for follow-up research, we could create automatic incentives for scientists to attempt independent replication. And just one replication, if it's well powered, can actually increase the confidence in such findings tremendously. And if they do not replicate, it could actually help us to fix wrong assumptions and actually steer people into more productive directions, what they do research on. Second thing that I wanted to mention is alternative funding mechanisms that can evolve in science. So one of the problems that you mentioned is, of course, that at the beginning, when you're starting out with a new idea, it is very difficult for funding agencies to determine which of these ideas is actually valid, which of them will actually succeed. That's the classic problem in investing into risky early stage things. You basically have to take a portfolio approach, and most of the things, they will not work out, and some of them will. And it's almost impossible, even for the smartest funding agencies, to actually pick the winner, the correct winner, most of the time. But this is what funding agencies are currently trying to do. And I think there is alternative funding mechanisms evolving that would actually solve that problem around the idea of retroactive funding mechanisms, where you would basically create a pot, a funding pot, that would create an incentive for solving a particular problem, right? So you could set up a pot, for example, for basically curing Alzheimer's disease or something like that. And you don't have to pick a winner ex ante. It would basically be a pot that gets retroactively distributed to the people and the contributions that actually help to solve that problem. And then you can have basically market mechanisms around that concept, which actually also solve the liquidity problem that you have earlier on. So you could have intermediaries that basically invest small amounts into a bunch of small startup studies and become basically part of the cap table of those research projects. And for those that are successful, they can continue investing. And then for these type of investors, there would then be a potential payoff in the form of the retroactive funding pool that is available. So mechanisms like that, they would actually help us to bring some of the wisdom that we actually have in venture capital. Venture capital is basically doing the same thing, right? So it's a mechanism where you're distributing funds to a bunch of early stage projects. You don't really know which of them are going to be successful. You're making bets. You know that 90% are not going to be successful, but the 10% that are, they will return your fund because they will IPO, or you can sell them or whatever. If you have a similar mechanism in science, I think we can take some of that wisdom, some of that knowledge that we already have from that field, and bring it to science and make it much more productive.
Well, one thing I want to add here is funny story. My talk later today will be about public goods funding mechanisms for DeSci ecosystem growth. Definitely check it out. And I believe that, you know, besides like all these different funding mechanisms, how we can create like, you know, let's say new connections from academic research into alternative funding means and the crypto markets. It's not only about bringing more capital into the ecosystem, from crypto to academia, but also obviously the other way around. So how many institutional investments from academia do we actually see flowing into DeSci? And I also believe that one of the promises we have right now in decentralized science is, like, again, not only creating a lot of liquidity for super early stage research projects, but also realign the incentives. So for example, academia is, like, in a nutshell, like a broken industry. There are a lot of things that are not working. There are a lot of things that are working. I mean, this is the reason why we have science, right? But what I see is that, especially when it comes to, like, inventions, intellectual property, patents, and so on, is that originally patents were a mean of protecting inventors. We had inventor-friendly terms, okay? We had, terms that ensured that nobody can just copy an invention, go with it and claim it, that it's his own, but instead have, like, a proven track record. So what happened over the last couple of 100 years was that, we had the shift from inventor-friendly terms to investor-friendly terms. So instead of benefiting the people doing the work on the ground that is actually driving scientific and technological progress forward, we see that, there are a lot of IP lawyers, a lot of institutional investors, even a lot of public institutions, universities, right, exploiting the people that create value for society, disowning them with their invention so that they can make a profit for themselves. And I think this is, like, really, really unfair. So this is the reason why academia is a broken system. And I believe that instead of building on top of these broken systems and bringing, just throwing a lot of money in there and saying, like, wow, now we can make even more money with a broken system, we can kind of reshape the landscape, realign the incentive structures, as one example, but also, work on, like, governance structures, policy frameworks. How do we want to navigate academic progress as well in this whole ecosystem of independent researchers, of decentralized scientists, and so on. So yeah, and I'm really, really excited how this might look like in the future. So
we have the idea of blockchain here is basically allowing us to turn incentives and funding mechanisms and governance and verification into a decentralized, almost market-based mechanism. The market is what humans have invented over the last 200, 300 years to coordinate large amounts of people and capital globally without anybody really being involved. It's a wonderful mechanism, but putting everything into the market, especially when you're trying to accelerate scientific progress, does present some problems. And a lot of people are very concerned about accelerating scientific progress with market-based mechanisms at its core. So we don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to ask you guys to raise your hand if you have a particular interest in answering this question, because it's difficult. But what can blockchain and DeSci do to protect against the hyper-financialization, to protect against the exploitative nature of market mechanisms for science?
Just two things very quickly. First of all, markets are able to solve extremely complex problems. We know it. We have been unable to solve the same problem without markets, but they don't solve all problems. And there are a large amount of part of our economy that is not solved within the free market. We know it. Actually, this solve is really, the market make it very problematic. Why? Because there is a market needs, free information, equilibrium information, it needs liquidity, needs a lot of elements that are not always there. Blockchain can help that, because blockchain is a coordination technology. Blockchain is technology that can help in the information, in sharing the information, in the democratization. However, technology never fully solves problems. It opens other problems. So it can be disruptive of some models that they don't work, but it will create other problems. So I don't think blockchain is in itself the solution. We should be kind of very, very smart in it.
I want to add one or two more things. Yes, blockchain is a coordination technology. The thing is, how fast can we coordinate? And in a future where we have, let's say, autonomous agents handling the respective tokens of research communities, representing economies of scale for, again, research collectors, and then these AI agents interact with each other. I think then step by step we can, move scientific progress forward, solve the biggest issues in traditional academia, and make DeSci right. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm going to hand it over to.
We run out of time, unfortunately. So yeah. Would you like to go?
I just wanted to
Please.
add that blockchain technology can just be a vehicle to do that. So of course it's not the solution. So the solution has to come out of the system, and blockchain technology can support the solution.
Yeah. So markets and technology are one thing, but we are still humans after all, and so accelerating scientific progress takes a lot of the consciousness as well as the technology. So thank our wonderful guests up here. And thank you.